Welcome to the Sharing the Heart of the Matter podcast. Join us as we celebrate the brilliance of authors, storytellers, and creators. I'm Wynne, and in this inspiring episode, co-host Vicki Atkinson and I are talking with film director, philanthropist, and author Peter Samuelson. Peter directed such films as Return of the Pink Panther and Revenge of the Nerds. He's worked with Steve McQueen, Peter Sellers, and started 4 philanthropies, including one with Steven Spielberg. And now he's written this incredible book that combines the amazing and entertaining episodes from all those adventures with reflective lessons and learning. He tells us how he came to write this book, writing at 5 a.m. each morning to alternate between lessons learned on some days and anecdotes on others. He tells us the story that sparked the first charity he founded, Starlight, granting wishes to sick kids and their families. Peter teaches a course called Random Acts of Kindness and Pay It Forward. He explains the crossover between underprivileged kids and acts of service, and tells some heart-grabbing stories. We talk about Peter's delightful father, Sir Sidney Samuelson, and his infectious ability to talk to everyone. Peter relates a wonderful story about how his dad made a great connection to benefit his First Star Foundation, and how the ripple effect of Sir Sidney's life continues on. Peter tells us how he fell in love with his now wife of 40 years, Sarah, and gives some really solid advice about how to meet like-minded others. Vicki and I were transfixed by Peter's incredible energy and enthusiasm. His application of the second law of thermodynamics will move you into wanting to make a difference. His stories will leave you smiling and charmed. Finding Happy is a great book that launches on Tuesday, June 10th. It's such a fun read for all, but especially young adults, and a perfect gift idea for dads and grads. Join us for this inspiring episode with the delightful Peter Samuelson. We know you'll love it. Hi, Peter Samuelson.
It's nice to be with you.
Vicki and I are delighted to have you and talk about your amazing book, Finding Happy, which will be coming out for publication on June 10th. You just tell so many incredible stories and lessons. So we want you to start with the story of the video that you made that inspired this book.
So I made a film a number of years ago about Oscar Wilde, and I was desperate to cast an amazing British actor called Stephen Fry. I had Vanessa Redgrave, had Jude Law, and I wanted Stephen Fry. And we had all sorts of issues and problems and financing issues and so on and so forth. And eventually we did cast him and we made the film. So I got to know him really well. He is arguably the highest IQ person and the best read person I've ever met. And he came out and spent a summer in LA a few years ago, and I pitched up to have lunch with him at his house in the Hollywood Hills. I put a camera on a tripod and I said, simply look into the camera and answer one question, however short or long you want. Stephen, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were 18? And he just talked for 32 minutes, and then we had lunch. And when I got back to the office, I realized he has talked about 6 subjects. So I cut it down in roughly 5-minute clips, and I put them up on the internet and sort of forgot all about them. And the next time I looked, 2.5 million people had seen them. And here we are, it's several years later. It is, I wish I could have that size of audience for some of the films I've made, but it's like a perennial because there's a lot there for young people. So I wanted to write the autobiography because no one would believe the completely potty bananas things, scary things, funny things, ridiculous things that happen when you make films as a producer. But I also wanted to write a self-help book. I founded, and I'm the serving president of firststar.org, where we house, educate, and encourage high school age kids in foster care. So therefore, kids who've been abused or neglected. And our goal is to have them on the campus of a university for 4 years from 10th grade, from 9th grade through 12th grade, and then to get as many of them as possible into college, and the ones who don't go to college to get them into a productive career, all of which we do. 6% of American foster kids go to college. In the most recent crop, right now, it's almost June. We already know 89% of our foster kids are going from 12th grade into colleges and universities. So it's a big deal. It's very, very successful. And we've got 12 of these academies in the United States and 3 in the UK, and we're growing all the time. The governor of California has just put a $1.8 million grant allocation, whatever it should be called, into the California state budget. We've got some of our scholars, we call them our students, and staff up in Sacramento right now, meeting with the Assembly and Senate budget committees, because it's not as simple as the governor puts it in and everyone celebrates and then you spend it on foster kids. You actually have to keep it in the budget by going and meeting with everyone on the 2 committees and the state legislative analysts. So we got all of that going on at the moment. So I wanted to write a book based on my pattern recognition of mentoring not just foster kids, but I'm also a member of an amazing thing called the Mentor Project. And I've developed sort of a list of, I realized, 2 or 3 dozen issues which most young adults, the things that bother them, that they're perplexed by, are on those lists. So I started writing on alternate days the autobiographical, boy, have I worked with some crazy people. You want to know from narcissists? Ask me. And on the odd numbered days, writing the self-help book. And the only way I thought I'll get this done is I got up for like a year at 5 o'clock in the morning and I made myself write for 1 hour every morning before anybody phoned me and before I opened email. And halfway through, I realized, why am I writing 2 separate books? I've got examples from my checkered career as a film producer, which illustrate the life lessons that are in Finding Happy, the self-help book. I could combine them, and that would kind of punch it up and make it hopefully a bit electrifying. So I did. And then, so I finished it. I finished the manuscript. I thought I'd have to self-publish it. Next thing I know, somebody suggested an agent to me at Folio Literary, a guy called Jeff Silberman, brilliant man. He goes out with it. He gets a little bit of a bidding war going. Simon and Schuster Regalo get it. Then the next thing I know is that they ask, because he was clever and he didn't give them the world outside North America. They came back and they said, we need the world outside North America. We want the whole thing. So we gave them that. And June 10, I just finished. Much to I love new experiences, completely new experiences, never done anything like this. I had to go and sit in a booth in Burbank for 5 days, 6 hours a day with a great big microphone and a guy called Paul on the other, wonderful man, engineer on the other side of the glass. And I just had to read my book into the microphone. So there is an audio book, there's the Kindle electronic book, and there's the paperback. And
There you go. Well, you've delivered so well because it is both that story of the crazy episodes that you've been a part of. One of my favorites being Peter Sellers' Dirty Laundry in Revenge of the Pink Panther.
Return of the Pink Panther.
Sorry, mixing that up with Revenge of the Nerds. With that one, and there's great self-help moments, and you deliver them both beautifully. You say that the only classes you feel qualified to teach, other than filmmaking, are random acts of kindnesses and pay it forwards. Can you tell us more about those courses that you teach?
It's the most wonderful thing. I love teaching it because honestly, I get so much more from the kids, the students, than I put into it. All I do is I just frame it and then sort of light the touch paper and stand back and watch the fireworks. So the first class, 90 minutes, I say, okay, here's a question for you. I want you to think hard about this. You're walking along the sidewalk and in front of you, there is an old lady in rags and she's fast asleep, face down. Which of these three things do you do? A, stop and put some money, $1 or something, under her arm, walk on. Or B, do you wake her up and give her the $1? Or C, do you not wake her up, not give her $1, and just walk on by looking the other way? And it leads to a very earnest conversation about the golden rule. The golden rule is in 170 world religions. Every single religion in the world has the sense of social justice, the sense of balance, the obligation, if you are in this civilization, whether you're doing it for God or your village, to lift other people up. You can't just sort of be complacent and sit there. And then I say, okay, so it's in all these religions, but those of you who said you would give her $1, did you only say that because of God? What if you were an atheist? And they say, no, you could still feel that even if you were an atheist. Absolutely, you could stop and you could feel that feeling in your heart. There's something the matter with this picture. And so that leads to a conversation about the second law of thermodynamics. And in a class of 30, there's usually 3 or 4 who know what that says. And of course, what it says is in any closed system, and a closed system can be the engine in your car, it can be your family, it can be your planet or your city. In any closed system, if you do not apply energy, you will have a phenomenon called entropy, which means it'll all collapse and fall to bits. It'll end up in random nothingness. If you don't lubricate the engine, it will eventually stop going. If you don't nurture your family, you won't have a family. And if we don't take care of our planet, it's going to get so hot that we're going to have migration 1,000 times greater than anything we've ever seen, because that's the history of migration. It's always because of climate of one kind or another. So we do that, and I say, you're going to love the class tomorrow, and I tease it by saying, tomorrow you are each going to receive $200. They say, we're getting $200. And I say, you'll have to come along to the class tomorrow to find out. So we sit there the next day and I say, there is an amazingly generous, kind man in Dallas called Mort. And Mort has donated money so that each of you are going to receive $200. And they say, we get $200. And I say, no, you don't get it. You can't keep it. You have to give it away. You have to write an essay to whom or to what you wish it to go. And then we're actually going to go out and do it. And then a couple of weeks later, you're going to go and find out, did the unhoused gentleman buy the shoes or did he buy a big bottle of brandy? Because philanthropy sometimes doesn't work. And they write the most, I cannot tell you how moving the little essays are. I'll only say one of them. My name is Jose. I'm 15 years old. I'm in the First Star Academy at UCLA. I'm in foster care. I'm adding $10 that I've saved up of my own because that makes $210. And if you divide 210 by 3, it's $70. I need 3 times $70 because it costs down at the Humane Society $70 for them not to euthanize a puppy. And I am going to save 3 puppies because the last time I was down there, I looked into the eyes of a puppy that had been very badly beaten.
Oh.
And I saw my own eyes because I was very badly beaten myself. So I'm saving 3 puppies. Love, Jose. And then we actually did it. And it's things like that are, I'll give you one more. My mum did some very bad things, and now she's in prison for another 2 years, 7 months, and 4 days. They always know exactly how much longer the parent is going to be incarcerated. I know she hates the shampoo, so I'm putting the money into her prison account so that she can buy better toiletries because I love her very much. That kind of thing. The really extraordinary thing is like watching flowers grow. As a result of the class, and it's only 2 90-minute classes, after we've done it and we've given away the money and worked out whether it worked or not and so on and so forth, the kids are all taller. It gives them, I guess, agency, makes them feel as though maybe I'm not the worst off in the whole wide world. Maybe it is in my power. They've never had any power. All they do is the social worker says, tomorrow at 9 a.m., pack your stuff in the trash bag because I'm picking you up and taking you to a new placement. But I don't want to go to a new placement. Well, sorry, but you have to go to a new placement. Why do I have to go? Well, because we need this bed for somebody else and you're going to a new placement. That kind of thing. And what does it do to your soul if what you're given is not a suitcase to pack your stuff, but a trash bag? It tells you that everything you own is trash and probably your trash as well. I had a lunch in one of the academies, in one of the residential sessions just recently with a young man. And I said, you eat so much. I've never seen someone put away as much food as you, always. And he said, well, I'm always hungry. And I said, why are you always hungry? He said, well, I always go to bed hungry in the placement. And I said, well, but can't you just go to the fridge and get a snack? And he said, no, there's a padlock on it. And I said, wait a minute, time out. There is a padlock on the fridge. And I said, who have keys to the fridge padlock? And he said, well, the mother and the father, the foster carers, and their teenage kids. I said, so does anyone else not get a key? He says, no, I'm the only one. I'm the foster kid. I don't get the key. So I'm always hungry. I think it's such a soul destroying.
Well, and Peter, what we love about your book, you use the word agency. So that crossover from your role as a teacher and, the heartfelt stories that come to something you say early on in the book. You write, when the world looks bleak, go micro, focus on being the author of your life. When I read that, I felt the word agency because I think, your book is such a beautiful companion piece for people who want to do the right thing, but need to hear the stories and be lifted up. But I think that's such a powerful statement about stay local, look at what you can do right in front of you. And children that are hungry because the refrigerator is padlocked, it speaks to your philanthropy and the synergy, I think, around all the things that you're doing, including finding happy to really inspire other people to get busy because there's work to be done.
Well, how great would it be if the book is a mechanism to, bang on the water around me and make the ripples. And if those ripples go out and lift up people who then help other people who help other people, or if it goes on to young adults who grow up to be older adults who, marry and have children, and then those children have children who have children, it could be a very big pond,
Right.
Think of it as a kind of breeder reactor to make positive change around us. I do think it's a very threatening, unfortunate time, and I'm not making a political statement at all, but I think to be 18 years old or 25 years old and trying to find your way, regardless of what politics you come from, I think this is a very challenging time. And what I say in the book is, if you aspire to something and you literally can't get there because other people won't let you, well, think of it this way. You're sitting in an envelope in the dark, but you have a pencil, and you can choose to just sit there cross-legged and not try anything, or you can poke with the pencil in some direction. And sure, occasionally, if you poke with the pencil, it'll go through the envelope. And you'll say, whoops, I guess I will never be a concert pianist. But you can pull the pencil back and stick it at a tangent in another direction, and you can try that. So I try to sell the idea that being a young adult should be, to the greatest extent you can make it happen, a time to experiment. Before you all of a sudden wake up and think, I have to pay the rent, I have to put food on the table, I have to raise 3 children, I have to do this, I have to do that. While you can still experiment and you're entry level, or you're in college, even better. Why is college so good for kids in foster care? Well, they have somewhere to live for another 4 years, right?
But your book is exceptional because you bring the lessons and the stories forward, but you don't let the reader off the hook. You have very insightful, reflective questions and prompts at the end, which, for the educator in me, that's the beauty of hear the story, apply the principle, make it resonate, within your own life. And you do that throughout the book in a way that makes it, I think, a resource, not a one read, but a go back to it as needed.
Well, I hope so. I mean, what I've been saying, because I've been doing these book launch things with the kids in First Star, shouldn't call them kids, young adults, the students, the scholars of First Star and the alumni. And I've been doing it with, we have youth coaches who we employ who are ex-foster youth, now undergrad or grad students, and we bring them back to, help pull the younger kids up the ladder behind them. What I've been saying to them is, sure, if you want to, go and sit on a rock somewhere, start on page 1 and end on page 350. You can do that, and it kind of hangs together that way. However, what I expect you'll do, because you are millennial or Gen Z or alpha at the younger end, what I expect you'll more likely do is there's a table of contents, and you'll run your finger down that and say, oh, I've been bothered by exactly that. Let me go to chapter so-and-so. I'll read that one first. It doesn't, the book is roughly chronological in terms of the life episodes, but that is trivial. Who cares? I was younger at the beginning of the book and older at the end. Okay. But that's relatively unimportant. I think it's fine to read it by topics in descending order of what bothers. Where do you need help? Where do I get a mentor? I did a thing it's worked out so much better than I had expected. My graphic design ability is that of a newt. I couldn't draw my way out of a paper bag, but what I did.
No offense to newts everywhere,
no,
right?
No, I love all newts and what they turn into, go kiss a frog. So what I did is I did a list of the words in the book in descending order of prevalence and omitting verbs and prepositions. So just nouns, really. And I used one of the AI engines just to analyze and tell me the relative frequency of all these words. And I looked at it and I said, oh, now I really see what my book is about. I did a word grid. I did the first version of this, and then the publishers had their graphic designer make it much prettier. And they pointed out, for example, you don't have to spell the whole word. It's actually good to just have LOV, because the brain of the person standing in Barnes and Noble will hopefully say, oh, it's about love and kindness and life and health and success and social media and mentors and support and, exams and all of that. So, I'm really kind of a bit happy about this. I sort of think it turned out the way I wanted it to. Having said all of that, if nobody except my close relatives, my family, buy the damn book, I'll be completely wrong.
Well, we know that that's not going to happen, because in reading that, it just resonated so much with us. And what I love what you said about the ripples is that in some ways, this started with your your dad. I mean, you tell a great story about riding with your dad on the tube stop to Golders Green, if I've got that right. Um, and his ripples you can see through your life and your work. So can you tell us that story of that tube?
Well, my dad, who died age 97 3 years ago, he would have been 100 this year, December 7th. An amazing man. Left school at 14, dirt poor. They needed his paycheck to buy potatoes to put on the table and all that kind of thing. Raised by a single mother with 3 brothers, never went to college, made something of himself, built up a great big business. And, by the time he passed, he was a wealthy man. And he did amazing public service and got knighted by the Queen and all that kind of thing. Amazing man. There's a whole chapter about him in the book. Being raised by him was an honor and a privilege. And one of the things we, the children, my 2 brothers and I, and the grandchildren, always thought was hilarious was he was very brave on mass transit. He would make himself speak to the people sitting next to him. His goal was that by the time he got off the bus or the tube or whatever it was, he would have done the most un-English thing, which was to have a detailed conversation with whoever was sitting next to him. And he would, come home and say, I sat next to such an interesting young woman, born in Nigeria, had to run away from Boko Haram, came to England, trained as a nurse. She's the head of pediatric nursing at a children's hospital, and this and that and the other and so forth. And occasionally, when I would go over and, obviously while my parents were alive, I would always stay with them in the old family home, in my old room. I was actually on a tube and it was crowded and I was sitting opposite him, so I couldn't hear what was going on. But he had an animated conversation with a woman. And then we get off the tube and he gives me a business card and he says, contact this woman. I told her all about firststar.org and she wants you to contact her because she is at a funding charity and she thinks she could provide some financial support. And I did, and she did. Amazing. And we've sort of worked with them ever since. So, I mean, he was a very, dare to do. One of the life lessons I've put in the book is if you want to be successful in school, here are some school hacks. Number 1, always, without fail, ask a question in every single class. Put your hand up, frame a question in your head, and whether you're scared or abashed or shy, just ask the question and try to make it an intelligent one. Why should you do that? Number 1, because you might get the answer. Number 2, because the teacher will love you, because clearly you were listening. And number 3, because you'll have to listen and pump a little bit of adrenaline. And you will remember the class. Classes where you ask a question are classes where you remember the bit of the syllabus that was covered, which is why you are going to school. You're not doing it for the teacher. You're doing it for you. So don't sit at the back and, fly spitballs at the back of the heads of boys in the front. Just, sit at the front and be the teacher's pet. Watch how your grades go up. I dare you, and I bet you. And there's all sorts of other things like, how to shake hands, especially for kids who've been raised by wolves with no decent family. They don't know how to brush their teeth. They don't know anything about financial literacy. What is a debit card? Is it different than a credit card? Who knows? So the curriculum in First Star is 1/3 academic, 1/3 life skills, sex ed. What is the difference between love and sex? Oh, very different. Let's talk about that. And then the last third is community and family for kids who never had any. They've either been abused or they've been neglected. There's this whole new category in the last 5 or 8 years, which is that the parents are not evil people, but they became addicted to fentanyl and unable to take care of their kids. And then the kids went into foster care. And the sad reality of most foster care is it defines its job. 2,200 jurisdictions in the United States, they've all worked out how to do foster care, usually run by the local authority, the city, the town, the county, whatever. And they think their job is, okay, we've had an allegation of abuse or neglect. The police and a social worker will go in and investigate. If they validate the abuse or neglect, we will remove the kid and we will put them somewhere safe. We will keep them somewhere safe, usually a different place every few months. And when they turn 18, usually, we will say, happy birthday, Harry. Send us a postcard. Now, I don't know about you ladies, but I've actually never met an 18-year-old who was an adult. And I'm including my 4 children in that. I think if you're really lucky, kids turn into self-sufficient adults in their mid to late 20s, and you better have some grown-ups helping them until then. So foster care thinks its job almost always ends with taking care of the kids. But think of a family, a good family, a good, prospering middle-class family. The job parenting doesn't end when you cross your kid over the road so they don't get run over. That's just the beginning of it. You listen to them plinking away on a piano and you say, Sheila, wow, you enjoy trying to play the piano all by yourself? Would you like lessons? You could play it really well, We'll get you a tutor. It just begins there. Oh, you're a really fast runner. We've got to get you on the track team at school. Yeah. And on and on and on. The job of parenting, and in a way, I had no idea what the curriculum should be. I just said, if these were my children, what would I do? Yeah. And the answer is much better academics, because if you don't have an SAT or an ACT score, you're not going to go to college or university, even if, you're very well behaved and pleasant to be with. You actually have to have the grades as well. So academic, because mostly these are poor kids who have gone to poor kids schools where the teaching is, very C plus, A, B minus. So we fix that. We're better to do it than at a university. They know a thing about it, teaching young people. So we do that. We have so many people who volunteer to teach. We never know what to do with most of them. And then the second part of the curriculum, life skills, because why would they know how to brush their teeth? If nobody ever took 10 minutes to tell them, why would they know? And then the third thing is, okay, you had a very rough go of it, not your fault. You are the author of the story of the rest of your life. And look to the left, look to the right. These are your new siblings.
Well, and what I love that you did, forgive me for interrupting, Peter, but what I love that you did, with my background being more mental health, you have a chapter in the book, I think it's 37, where rather than blame laying, you very kind of clearly say, this is what you do when people you love or who loved you lose their way, lose their compass. And so, addiction, mental health issues. So, there are plenty of books out there and resources where it begins with, let me lay blame, and then we'll work on helping you get to where you need to go. But your approach is so soft and gentle about accepting, that sometimes people disappoint us and we end up in harm's way. But the point is now to look for the helpers and embrace the opportunities. And I was so pleased to see that woven into your book, because I think it's sometimes overlooked, or it's dealt with a very heavy hand. But you did that. Chef's kiss. Well done.
Well, I think, what is the core value? Kindness. Yes. You can choose to do things cruelly or kindly, just about everything in your life and every interpersonal relationship. Kindly is much better, and it comes around and helps you back. And there's a whole chapter about how to apologize and what is redemption. And that redemption includes, you have to kind of expiate your guilt for doing some bad thing. You have to do something good to make up for it. And you should do that, because you would feel less guilty if you were a net plus to the universe. So
good. Can I embarrass you with another one of my favorite lines from the book? It's about the apology. You say this, and it's so good. By apologizing, you almost completely remove the other person's ability to blame you more. It's a liberation statement. And I've never heard that expressed quite that way before, but that was a brilliant thought for the generation that you're trying to speak to. It is powerful.
Well, they're used to, and therefore I grasped to find valid life hacks, quick,
Yes.
45-second pick-me-ups,
Yeah.
solutions to things, sort of paradigms that you can invoke that will help you a lot. And I do think hardly anyone apologizes in a self-helpfully way, because most people apologize, say, well, I was having a bad day and this person was mean to me. And yeah, sorry, I did so and so. It's not an apology. If you make a fulsome, full-throated apology, it completely takes the wind out of the sails of the person who is angry with you.
Right.
It is a rare person who can continue to be angry with a person who wholeheartedly apologizes. But there is no reason why, and I've had this come up roses for me personally. There was someone who did me a terrible, awful thing in business. I mean, honestly, a fraud, and I wouldn't have anything to do with her. Then months later, a FedEx letter, a handwritten 4-page letter arrived apologizing. And all the women in my family said, to heck with her. Don't reply. She's a terrible, awful person. And I did reply, and I said, I think it was a very brave thing that you did. Please consider yourself forgiven. However, go read your Bible. To expiate a sin, you have to seek redemption. And what that means is you have to do some good stuff. Right. You have to put yourself out and lift up your planet somehow or other, your community, your family, your people, your civilization. And she did. And I was able to say, wow, congratulations. This is so amazing.
It's a great hack. And you have many of them in the book, but that's one that just really jumped out at me, because I think some of the younger sometimes are quick to be in defense mode, and letting go of that.
Love. So, Peter, you've been married for 40 years. You have 4 exceptional kids. You have created these 4 incredible nonprofits. You've made so many incredible, wonderful films. You've raised so much money for nonprofits. That's a lot to be proud of. I mean, I could keep going, but I'm just going to try to sum that up there. You write, love and empathies are pillars of the meaning of life. Go find yours. And that's sums it up really nicely.
It's at the end of a chapter. Somebody said to me, if you want to write punchy prose, always have like a telling sentence at the very end of a chapter. Leave that in their head when they go off to make lunch. And that's one of those. Yeah, but I think it's the truth. I think no one can really thrive without unconditional love. And if you can't get it from your family, you have to find somebody else to give it to you. And you have to be very careful. I mean, young women who are in foster care, good Lord. I mean, sex trafficking is the other side of the coin of group foster homes. The pimp parks in his Cadillac out front, and the young lady age 14 or 15 comes out because she's just had a row with someone. And the pimp says, they're being mean to you again. You look hungry. Can I buy you a hamburger? And that is where the grooming starts. So we have to be so careful that we don't, create that conduit. Having said that, I do think that we can help young people by getting them outside their own negative vicious circle and showing them that there are these adjacent virtuous circles. The more you volunteer, the more you will meet great people. Hey, I met my wife by volunteering. The most amazing thing, my very first charity, the Starlight Children's Foundation, decades ago, after my cousin introduced me to a very seriously ill little boy, Sean, and we brought him to LA with his mum, and we spent 2 weeks trying to make him happy, and we did. And he went home and he passed away, and we realized that we'd done something terrific for him, but also for his mum, and that it wasn't even difficult what we did. And I called a meeting, because what do film producers do? We call me. I
that line in the book, and I love it.
Yeah.
Also, what we do is we cast. And just as you cast a film, you cast a meeting. What do I need for this meeting next week? I need a lawyer. I need an accountant. I need a publicist. I need someone who understands how to organize an entity. I need a bookkeeper. I need a graphic designer. I need someone who understands the politics of hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So when I said, okay, let's do it, and they all said, yeah, let's do it, I said, maybe we could grant 5, 6, 7 wishes a year, something, like that. Got to be a lot of sick kids in the world. And the lawyer said, so I need to incorporate it, get a 501c3 nonprofit certificate. What do you want to call it? And I said, I don't know. What shall we call it? And there was a young lady there with whom I had had one date. It was back in my single days. And I had had one date, and I had phoned her and said, hi, remember me? I'm so sorry. I should have phoned you, and my bad. I'm having a meeting. I need an accountant. Would you please come to this meeting? And when the lawyer said, what do you want to call the charity? She said, you know that children's rhyme? Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might have this wish I wish tonight. She said, why don't we call it the Starlight Children's Foundation? And we all said, yeah, sounds really good. And the graphic designer said, I see it in my mind's eye. I'll do some roughs. It's a child reaching for a star. I said, yes, happy and ambitious, the silver cloud in the black nightmare of the silver lining in the black cloud of, awfulness and pain and suffering and whatnot in illness. And that was the beginning of the Starlight Children's Foundation, which all these years later has raised well over $1 billion. But back to that meeting, that was the second date with that young lady, the accountant.
Right.
And then there was a third and a fifth and a 10th. And then we did a Christmas party where we had a live band in the auditorium of the children's ward at County USC Medical Center in downtown LA, just east of downtown. And we had, all the kids from the ward had come in, and the band was playing and the kids were dancing, except there was one little girl who was so ill that she couldn't get out of bed, and they had wheeled her entire bed with an IV and everything into the room, and she was dancing horizontally in her bed. And we had these adult-sized character costumes that had been donated to us by SeaWorld, and they were all marine animals, and one of them was a dolphin. And in the chest of the dolphin was kind of like a grill for the adult inside to look out. And looking out of it was my accountant, with whom I had, 5 dates by then. And as I looked in, I saw all her mascara had run because she was so moved, as was I, by the kid trying to dance horizontal in the bed. Honest to God, I thought to myself, I think I love this person. Eventually, we had more dates and whatnot. There is nothing like volunteering for a nonprofit to meet the love of your life, not to mention really wonderful friends. Why would anybody be there if they're a negative so-and-so? You don't have bullies volunteer to spend 10 hours a week helping seriously ill children, or foster kids, or the homeless. So it's like it's a filter that gets rid of a whole lot of crummy people. And what you're left with is some pretty splendid young adults. Well, pal around with them, lick envelopes with them, volunteer.
I love that. You brought it full circle. I love service, finding happy, empathy. We love this book. We love this conversation, Peter. Thank you so much for your time. And we just can't wait for the world to feel the ripples of your book.
Well, I'm dying. The publisher says I'm mad, but I've actually put my email address in the book. You have to look for it. But I'm really looking forward to getting reactions from young adults or anybody and creating a bit of a feedback loop.
Yeah.
And it goes on sale June 10. It's a Kindle, it's a paperback, it's an audio book, as they say, wherever books are sold. And the other funny thing that just happened is it's gone into all the bookstores you would imagine, Barnes and Noble and whatever. And then the publisher sent me an email. It's gone into Target. And when I told the family, my adult children, my son said, where are they going to put the display of books in Target? I said, I have no idea. He said, I think the books should go between the condoms and the plastic cutlery. And I said, I think that is its natural place in the universe. I'm very grateful.
You know, I have kids that are 5 and 9, and they like to make these little bags for the homeless people that they see. They put granola bars, and then they put a couple dollars of their own money in, and we drive around. We spend a lot of time driving around giving them out. So I was telling my daughter about your book, and so she'll send you an email, Peter.
Absolutely. And I just have to add that there's so many glorious stories in the book, but for those that are looking for inspiration, but also for the movie buffs that may be listening or watching some of your stories, it would be a whole other podcast just to dive into, my movie heart, and my husband's were just, singing about some of the humorous anecdotes that you shared, and you were there on the scene. So I think it's just there are a lot of layers, so much to enjoy.
You're very kind. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, those of you listening to this, and onwards we roll. It'll be what it'll be. I've got my fingers crossed. Thank you.
Congratulations, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Our music is composed for Sharing the Heart of the Matter by the exquisitely talented duo of Jack Canfora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, please visit our site at sharingtheheartofthematter.com.